Kinda Murdery is sponsored by Helladoge.com. That's HELLADOGE.com. The only social media website that pays 80% of its profits out to real users in real Dogecoin just for doing what you do anyway. It's a blast on there, guys. Get out of the Facebook game. Get into the crypto game. Helladoge.com.
Warning. Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
California's rugged and scenic northwestern corner is the beginning of the great Pacific Northwest. A region of untamed and primitive beauty.
Humboldt County Sheriff's Department has now joined efforts with the Arcata Police.
Growers living off the grid. Humboldt County also has the highest rate of missing person cases in the state. 60% of marijuana is grown in the United States.
There's a lot of evil here. A lot of evil.
This is Kinda Murdery, and you're entering the Emerald Triangle. Wow, that was nuts. Hey everybody, welcome to Kinda Murdery. I'm your host Zevon Odelberg. Thank you for deciding to be here. Today, we're going to be talking about a very gold-rich place in Trinity County called Carrier Gulch. Before we get into Carrier Gulch, I gotta tell you a little bit about my guest today. I'm super excited to have him here. It is Stuart Blues from the British Murders podcast, the dean of all things British killing. How you doing, Stuart? How are you today?
I like the introduction. I'm very well, thank you. I like the name of the place you mentioned as well. Carrier Gulch, was that what you said?
I did. It's evocative, isn't it?
It's a very bizarre name. Do you have many bizarre names over there for place counties and cities?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the episode that just came out this Thursday took place in a town called Hawkins Bar. You know, Stuart, before we jump into the story today, there's something I gotta ask you about. I have always been fascinated by accents. Maybe because I'm an American or because I'm Californian and we're not supposed to have one or something, but what can you tell me about your accent?
Yeah, so my accent is broadly a Yorkshire accent. So Yorkshire is one of our counties. You can compare counties to states, I suppose, like California, New York, Arizona. These would all be, in our place, it would be counties. So you have Yorkshire, you have Essex, Sussex, Lancashire, all these kind of places are counties, we call them. Now, each county has its own accent, I suppose, but also each city and town within each county has its own accent, which you have to have a very talented ear to tell the difference. So, for example, I'm from a town called Huddersfield, and we have a city that neighbours us called Bradford, and also another city called Leeds, which you may have heard of. Leeds is quite one of the more well-known cities in England, near Manchester as well. Now,
The Who live at Leeds. I have the album. Yes. And then Yorkshire would be famous for, I imagine, Richard II and pudding, right?
Yorkshire puddings for sure. I'm not much of a royalist. I can't tell you much about Richard II.
Well, I think he was the Duke of York, if I've read my Shakespeare a bit.
Probably.
But I was, I guess, leaping to the wild conclusion that York is in Yorkshire.
Yeah. So York is in Yorkshire because it's the biggest county. It's broken up into 4 sections, north, east, south, and west. I think it's actually classed as it's North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, and then you've got the east and west riding of Yorkshire. And I believe York, if my geography's on point, is in North Yorkshire.
All right.
I believe.
Good to know. Well, I certainly sang the Grand Old Duke of York at bedtime with my mother when I was just a little ankle biter. So there's that for sure. Shall we jump? Let's jump into the story, shall we? Mm-hmm. So back to Carrier Gulch. It's about 6 miles southeast of Hayfork, California. And Carrier Gulch T-bones into Wildwood Road. Now, here on Kinda Murdery, we already shared a dark tale of this same cursed Wildwood Road in February 3rd's episode of Insomniac. This is the self-same road where in 1955, Burton Wilbur, Berkeley accounting student and Wildwood psychopath, murdered poor 14-year-old Stephanie Bryant. There must be some dark magnetic energy drawing accountants to violence at Wildwood Road. For today's story of murder in Wildwood involves an accountant as well. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. So first we're going to go to Wildwood, and then to Carrier Gulch, and then forward 9 years from 1955, when the murder of Stephanie Bryant occurred, to 1964. And there at the dawn of 1964, there's a prophetic road sign that sits on Carrier Gulch, pointing the way to 3 adjacent active gold mines. Stuart, how often do you hear someone call a road sign prophetic?
Not often. I think that might be a first for me. I don't take that much interest in road signs, I'll be honest.
Well, and neither did I, and not until this story. But let me unpack for you just a little bit why that might be a prophetic road sign. There at the sign, first you see a U.S. Forest Service trail guide that says Carrier Gulch. And then below that, someone has nailed a board that says CF KREISS, end of the road. And indeed, there's a triple significance to the phrase that will start to become clear as we jump into this story. So here we go. The Carrier Gulch mine was owned by crusty 74-year-old lifelong Trinity resident and miner, Charles KREISS. Now, KREISS was well known in Trinity. He lived there his whole life. He owned a meat market, which I have to assume in 1964 was another way to say butcher shop, because these days meat market means something else entirely.
It's actually funny you say that, because I recently had an episode where someone worked at a chicken shop or something, or like a meat shop, and I was like, I think that is just a butcher as we know it. It's just old terminology.
Well, when I first moved to Los Angeles, there was a bar in Santa Monica called the Gaslight. And it was, in theory, a karaoke bar. But in practice, it was so tightly packed with horny human cattle. If you went in there, like, if you didn't take somebody home, it's because you didn't want to. I mean, it was fishing with dynamite for fish in a barrel in that place, and that's what I think of when I think of a meat market. All right, so meat marketist, butcher, restaurant owner, Charles KREISS. He'd also been married to the superintendent of schools in Hayfork, but by 1964 they were divorced. And he owned the Carrier Gulch mine, and it was him who nailed up the board that said CF KREISS, end of the road. Not to tip my hand too much, but what I'm laying out for you here is that this old prospector, well, he's our murder victim. It was, in fact, there at Carrier Gulch, the end of the road for CF KREISS. The other 2 mines, the Hornet Mine and the Shamrock Mine, are owned by a young couple named Mr. and Mrs. Darrell Bross. Darrell and Lola, in fact. He's 27, she's 24. And they're from New York City. This season of Kinda Murdery is about the Emerald Triangle, which is a region of Northern California that is largely rural. I grew up there, and growing up, every man I knew, regardless of their politics, pretty much wore Wrangler jeans, cowboy boots, and drove a truck. Now, why that matters is it contextualizes a little bit what happens in this story. You have this crusty old guy who's always been there in the woods in Trinity, and then you have this young couple who's recently moved from New York City out here to the sticks. Mm-hmm. Any questions so far, sir?
None at all. I can compare this probably to someone living in the middle of London to moving up to rural Yorkshire, because we're in the north of England, they're in the south, they're in the metropolis. We're up here in the sticks, as it were. So I can kind of compare it to that. I've got the image in my head.
We're both originally hillbillies, is what you're telling me.
You could put it that way. I'm happy with that.
All right. So are you from like a village, or would you call it a town or a city?
I'm probably being a little bit disingenuous by saying I grew up really in the sticks. Now, Huddersfield, the town I'm from, it's set up in there's little villages and little suburbs there. I grew up in a suburb called Golka, And I say rural compared to the city urban life of somewhere like London, which is, like you say, a massive busy place. It's our capital. There's a lot of greenery up here. There's a lot of fields, a lot of farmers, that kind of stuff. But it's not desolate because England, compared to America, is tiny. Compared to some of the states, it's tiny. So it's not 100 miles before you see some kind of desolate place.
The one thing that God's not making any more of is land, right? And people have been occupying England for thousands of years. So I take your point that there are no wild wildernesses left.
Certainly not where I'm from.
Back to our story. So the young couple shows up from New York City, and they buy these two mines, the Hornet and the Shamrock mine, that are literally adjacent to the Carrier Gulch mine. Well, old CF KREISS, he takes an immediate dislike to his new city slicker neighbors, and he essentially sets out to make their lives, for lack of a better way to put it, something of a living hell. Here's what he did. He put that into the road sign there at Carrier Gulch, but the thing is, his house was right there and his mine was right there. So he could drive to that point and access both his house and his mine. But he then declared that the road went no further past his place. Now, the Brosses, they may have been young and they may have been well-mannered and civilized and what have you, but they also weren't just about to lay down because some cranky Yosemite Sam decided he didn't like him driving by his house. So they keep driving the road. Well, Charlie doesn't like this, so the next thing he does is dig a ditch that he claims is for runoff but makes the road almost impassable. The young couple keeps coming. The next thing he does is he starts lacing the road with roofing nails. And so now they start getting flat tires. Sometime in early January, Charlie KREISS runs into Daryl Bross in the Hayfork Hotel, and with zero provocation, crusty old KREISS walks right up and just punches Daryl Bross square in the mouth, right in the face, right there in public. You ever been punched in the face, Stuart?
Not by a 70-odd-year-old man.
Oh my gosh, old man strength is scary. Did you have a chance to shake one of your grandfather's hands as a kid?
I can't recall, but I'm sure it was very firm. I don't think I've been punched in the face. Not yet, anyway.
Oh, lucky you. Lucky you. I got my 2 front teeth knocked out when I was 22. It was no fun at all. Oh. But yes, my grandfather and my father both have that old man who works strength. It's like that thing where vampires get stronger as they age. I think that's just because that's what happens to humans. You know?
Maybe. I do enjoy how you're describing this Yosemite Sam kind of crusty old guy.
Yeah. So he does. He punches his erstwhile young neighbor right in the face. Of course, Bross doesn't appreciate that. And Bross starts pestering the local DA and the sheriff to please press charges against Charlie KREISS. He just assaulted me for no reason. Bross sends a letter to the grand jury, of all things, specifically complaining about A, Charlie KREISS, and B, the sheriff and the DA's unwillingness to prosecute him for assault. Again, nothing comes of it. Again, he sends a letter. This time the letter gets answered by Judge Underwood, who is a crusty old man of his own variety. And Underwood says, look, we're not prosecuting this crime, but I promise you that it will be given to the grand jury. Like, it will at least be looked into. This all happens about a month before the real events. So what happens about a month later? At this point, the Brosses are still attempting to navigate this road that KREISS has essentially made impassable. And they're still just getting flat tires on the regular. At one point, Bross actually buys an ad in the Trinity Tribune, the local newspaper. And the ad says, "To all my neighbors at Carrier Gulch, further provocations will be met with a rifle."
Jesus, this guy.
Well, this is the young man who put that in the paper.
Oh, this is the young guy.
Yeah. He was tired of all of his tires popping all the time. He was tired of dealing with getting punched in the face and having nobody do anything about it. And so he literally published an open threat, said, if you mess with me anymore, I'm going to shoot you. I mean, that's the inference anyway. Mm-hmm. And you can just imagine the bare feet on hot coals, hopping mad jig Charlie KREISS probably danced when he saw that newspaper article.
I can imagine he was cleaning his own rifle in retaliation, I would imagine.
I would think so. Here we go. It is now mid-March, 1964. The Brosses are on their way out to their mines, and they pop a tire on roofing nails yet again. This is now the seventh popped tire they've had this year.
Wow.
And at this point, Daryl and Lola are like, look, we've had it. We've had enough. We're not putting up with this anymore. And what they decide they're going to do in retaliation, nothing physical, initially anyway. They're just going to go fill that damn ditch that Charlie KREISS dug, that he claims is a necessary irrigation ditch for runoff water, but in reality, what it is a ditch that narrows the road so much that you can't possibly miss the roofing nails he's laid down like some kind of a Home Alone prankster to pop your tires every time you just try to go to your own damn property. I mean, I'm getting mad at this old fucker myself, just telling the story, honestly.
I'm just thinking, well, I say it's hilarious because this is obviously a story that's going to be tragic any minute now. But it just seems like your local neighborhood old guy who's just pissed off at the younger generation for whatever reason. Why was there only one road, though, going through to their property?
I'm glad you asked that question because the answer may not indeed be obvious to most people, but this is a region of not just the state of California, but even of Trinity County, which is already a very rural place. This is an extremely rural area. Hayfork, which is probably 7 miles away, maybe has 2,000 people. I'll have to check my facts, but that's how small it is. And even where I grew up in Humboldt, the big city was a full hour away. It was called Eureka. It's about 35,000 people, and that's the county seat. But to get to my house from Eureka, you essentially had to drive 15 miles of 2-lane gravel road that took you about an hour to drive. Right. So, in fact, this idea that there are places where there would be only one road and only one option, it was not only common in 1964, it's still common in a lot of the northern part of the state today. I'm not putting any lipstick on that particular pig. It really is like that. One little Costa Rican mountain road is the only way to access their mines.
Right.
As I said, they're like, we've had it. We can't just passively take this abuse anymore. Not from the damn old prospector from Toy Story. Fucker, you know? And so they drive out in their truck with their 3-month-old baby, Virginia, asleep in the truck with them. Mr. Bross has a .45 pistol, .45 caliber 6-shooter, and Mrs. Bross is carrying a double-barreled shotgun, 12 gauge. Their plan is just to fill the ditch, but knowing their history with Mr. KREISS, they feel like it is wise to hope for the best and plan for the worst, to say the least.
How deep was the ditch, do we know?
Deep enough that you couldn't just drive over it in your truck, in your lorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have a truck bed full of gravel, and Daryl gets out, and essentially this ditch is right in front of Charlie KREISS's house. Now, it's late morning, and Charlie KREISS, and I find this quite entertaining, he's inside watching General Hospital. That's General Hospital, still on the air. I believe it's the longest running soap opera in America, but 1964 was year 2. The show premiered in 1963, so it's now almost 60 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have soap operas in England, right,
We
Stuart?
do, yeah. So I think our longest running one is probably Coronation Street,
Okay.
which I think probably started around, I think it might have been 1960 actually, because I think my mum was born the same year it started. But that's just like a rural Manchester, like a group of terraced houses all together in a local pub. It's not a hospital, but we have a hospital show called Casualty, which has been around for decades now. Similar premise.
There you go. So it's just all the daily life, romantic and other drama in essentially a closed space, whether it's a village and a bar or whether it's a hospital. But stereotypically anyway, it is the fare of, certainly in 1964, this would have been a fact and not just a stereotype. It's the entertainment fare of a housewife trapped in her home. So it cracks me up a little bit that Mr. Macho Krusty, I'm going to punch you in the face and don't you dare go work your claim, Charlie KREISS, is sitting at home in the middle of the day watching soap operas on the telly.
Whatever floats your boat.
How about instead of being so jealous of the Bross's 2 gold mines, why don't you go work your own, Charlie? Mind your business, So Daryl Bross starts filling up this ditch with gravel. Well, it doesn't take long. The sound of a shovel hitting gravel, as anyone who's buried a body on a country road late at night is familiar with. Certainly, I'm not. But the sound of a shovel hitting gravel and then a load of gravel falling into the back of a truck bed, that's pretty noisy.
Yeah.
So Charlie looks out his window, and he sees Daryl Bross filling up the ditch. Now, meanwhile, the Brosses are savvy, right? So Daryl has already sent his wife to go sort of stand behind a little hill or, I guess, embankment, obscure herself a little bit, get a little bit of high ground, and she's got the shotgun. The idea being, we're not going to start anything, but if Charlie does, we're going to be in position to respond. Charlie comes out carrying his 8mm Mauser rifle, and as he's about to lift it to his shoulder, Daryl Bross says, "Don't do it, Charlie. Don't you do it," because Bross already has his .45 out. "Don't you put that rifle on your shoulder, Charlie." Well, Charlie is incensed, and Charlie is not going to listen. As he starts to raise his rifle to his shoulder, Bross starts firing the .45. He fires 5 shots because he's a careful, safety-minded father who has his 3-month-old baby asleep in the truck and knew better than to put a primed cartridge right behind the hammer while he was driving on a bumpy road. So he fires 5 shots, and he misses with all 5. Well, now he's in a pickle.
How far apart were they?
I don't actually know. My guess would probably be about 15 yards. But this is one thing that people often don't realize. Even standard defensive target distance at a shooting range, like if you're a police officer, is really only about 7 yards, 21 feet. So people don't even practice shooting with handguns particularly far as a standard thing. Secondarily, you can be the best crack shot in the world. But if you're not familiar with firing your gun and hitting your targets while your body's surging with adrenaline because it thinks it's about to die, chances are you're not going to have the physical or emotional control to hit anything more or less regardless of how far away you are.
I suppose. I mean, we're quite naive about guns over here because of our sort of stringent gun laws. We've had guns banned here for a good few decades now. So with regards to gauges and millimeters and stuff, I just sort of have to nod and pretend I know what you mean. I know what a shotgun is, and I know what a revolver is, and a rifle.
Sure.
I have images in my head.
Sure. Well, yeah, and an 8mm, a Mauser, that's a German military rifle. It's a pretty small caliber, but with rifle-powered velocity behind it, it's going to be quite devastating. Bross misses all 5 shots, and now he's in a pickle because now Charlie has the rifle on his shoulder, and Charlie ain't dead. But Lola's already in position. She fires her shotgun. It is asserted later at the trial by them, and based on everything I've read about this story, I'm actually inclined to believe the Brosses, that she didn't actually fire it at Charlie KREISS with the intent of killing him. She essentially fired it at the ground, but then what happened is the pellets and the gravel kicked up, and he took a gut wound from the ricochet. It doesn't mention how Charlie got to the hospital or the doctor's office, but perhaps the Brosses actually drove him there themselves. So he gets to the doctor. 24 hours later, he dies. And now, the Brosses are on the hook for murder. But here's the thing. The doctor is one J. Garwood Bridgman, which is exactly the sort of name, if I were a novelist, I would be so proud to have made up myself. Dr. J. Garwood Bridgman, who later says that he was incredibly sick and exhausted that day, which I read between the lines to mean hungover as shit.
Been there. I've been there.
If Charlie was watching General Hospital, as memory serves, the soaps are on between about 10 a.m. and noon. So it's hardly Friday or Saturday night or something, and yet he's so exhausted and he's so sick. Well, perhaps. Or perhaps he's, got a flask in the desk at the doctor's office, another on the kitchen table at home next to the maple syrup, and he's just a chronic alcoholic. Rank speculation. He claims to have been sick and exhausted, but the upshot of it is there are 10 wounds in the lining of Charlie KREISS' stomach. Dr. J. Garwood Bridgman only manages to suture 3 of them, and he then turns over to the sheriff only 3 shotgun pellets. Well, Charlie dies, and the Brosses are on the hook for murder, except that it quickly becomes pretty clear to everyone who's not a partisan in this situation that Charlie didn't have to die. He was straight up butchered by Dr. J. Garwood Bridgman. And if you think I'm making that up, the sheriff discovers upon pressing Dr. Bridgman only slightly that of the 3 shotgun pellets that the doctor delivered to the sheriff, only one of them was removed from the stomach of Charlie KREISS. The other 2, the doctor went out later and found in an empty parking lot and gave to the sheriff, quote, because he didn't want to louse up the case.
Wow.
Oh my. I mean, perhaps not humorous. I guess I'm a bit of a ghoul, but essentially this old asshole who may very well have deserved to die. If he didn't deserve to die, let's put it this way. He very much provoked his killers who only killed him by accident and then tried to save him by getting him to the doctor, and he would have survived, except the doctor was so tired or sick or drunk or what have you that he botched the surgery so bad that he knew it. He knew the malpractice was so bad that he couldn't just claim things went sideways. He actually went out and harvested other shotgun pellets from a parking lot to make it look like he at least got 3 of the 10 instead of 1.
I mean,
oh my goodness.
I want to know how difficult it was for him to find shotgun shells in a parking lot, but also ones that matched the one that was retrieved from his stomach in the first place.
Right. I mean, that's a good question. The vast majority of shotguns owned for self-defense or even, duck or turkey hunting or something are probably 12 gauge. And again, this is very rural in a time when a lot of people hunted, so perhaps not that hard to find the shotgun pellets. Also because a lot of assholes like to shoot at road signs. So if you drive over to a road sign and look down at the road, you've got a decent chance. The thing that blows my mind even more, because remember, this is 1964, almost 60 years ago, they didn't have all the technology. There weren't video cameras everywhere. There weren't super advanced ways to monitor people's vital signs. There wasn't nearly the accountability in real time for a doctor or a surgeon that there would be today. In other words, somebody could just go ahead and die right? And maybe it was malpractice, but odds are you were going to get away with it, whether you wanted to or not. And yet, I picture J. Garwood Bridgman, essentially in real time, he's fucking up the procedure so badly. And by the way, KREISS is 74, so he could kick it at any moment as it is. But Garwood Bridgman knows that he's fucking it up so badly that it's absolutely his fault that this guy died, despite the fact that the guy's got a gut full of shotgun pellets, so much so that he feels the need to go out and harvest some more to sort of try to cover up his crime. I mean, that to me blows my mind, and it's also what made me think that he may have been very hungover. Perhaps his hands were shaking like leaves in the wind. How did he know for so certain that it was his fault the guy had died?
Yeah, he's done something wrong. I wonder at what point during the procedure he thought, oh my God, I have fucked this up. So maybe halfway through, he was like, right, what is my story going to be? And then I need to find one pellet, just one pellet, and then I've got some at home, or I know a parking lot where I can get some more. Thinking of his cover story while he's just making it worse and worse with his hands in this poor guy.
I think so. I mean, I think you actually pretty accurately said the quiet part out loud for what was going on in his head at the time. I mean, that's what I imagine. That horrible moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm having a nightmare and I haven't just fucked this up this bad, and then realizing, no, I have. But still not being clear-headed enough to think, if I've only managed to retrieve one pellet and this guy's shot all to hell, that somehow two more from a different shotgun are going to make the difference between my incompetence or not.
Yeah.
I mean, So you would think there would be just some natural sympathy for a young couple trying to make their way in the world, raising a daughter, all of that stuff. Well, not so much. They put Daryl Bross in jail. They put Lola Bross in jail. Now, with Lola, they set her bond at $20,000, which is pretty steep for back then. She's unable to raise it. And with Daryl, he's put in jail with no bail at all. Here we have a case that ought to probably be, at worst, involuntary manslaughter. And yet, this young father is given no bail, and the mother given a level of bail, either cash or property, that it's pretty much impossible for her to raise, and the judge would have been aware of that. And while they're in jail, their baby, little 3-month-old Virginia, is taken care of by the local reverend and his wife. So when they go to trial, the DA and the judge both decide that it is not relevant to make the jury aware of the not one, but 2 letters that Bross had written about KREISS assaulting him and the fact that he was upset that nothing was ever done about it. The second thing, and this is really reprehensible, the judge does not even instruct the jury that involuntary manslaughter is a verdict they are allowed to come back with. He instructs them that the only charge that they are deciding on is voluntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is a lot different than involuntary. Killed someone by accident versus killed someone on purpose. And voluntary manslaughter carries a sentence of 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So would voluntary manslaughter be something that people would perhaps do, we call it with diminished responsibility, i.e. because of mental health issues? So they intended to kill the person, but they weren't of a sound mind.
Yeah, I think so. Or you catch a guy with your best girl and you walk up and you punch him in the face. Well, you punched him on purpose and then he fell and hit his head and died. So you might get voluntary manslaughter because you didn't punch him on accident.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or you could get involuntary. That's kind of for the jury to decide. And also, I'm not a legal expert, so if everything I said is BS,
for the record, me neither.
Go ahead and email kindamurdery@gmail.com or tweet us and tell me I'm full of shit. The jury comes back with a verdict of guilty, and then Underwood, he has the latitude as the judge to sentence them from anything to probation to a year or 2. He sentences them, both of them, to the maximum penalty of 10 years in prison.
Wow.
Well, their attorney is apoplectic. He says, this is bullshit. They didn't mean to kill him. He had a rifle pointing at my client. She fired to try to scare him off. The pellets ricocheted. He took it in the gut. Then he was butchered by the doctor. That's why he died. He didn't even have to die. Then you repress the letter proving that the deceased had been violent towards my clients, and you don't even give the jury the opportunity to decide that it was involuntary manslaughter. He's basically like, F you, Underwood. I'll be appealing this. Mm-hmm. So they both go to prison, though. They both go to prison. About a year and a half, almost 2 years later, the attorney, good to his word, has sent the case up the judicial system on appeal, and the appellate court finds all of the reasons I just mentioned. They vacate the judgment. Well, now Trinity County has to decide if they want to retry the Brosses. And it comes down to, it's just too darn expensive. So what they do is they just release Lola, just released, and then they give Daryl 18 months probation, at which point he will be allowed to appeal to have his conviction vacated and expunged from his record. Daryl was such a good accountant, they immediately put him to work in the medical wing of the prison, which is usually a post that lasts only a month or two. But he was so valuable there, they kept him on for the entire time he was in prison, about almost 2 years, and they actually paid him a salary when they didn't have to because they wanted to keep him happy and working. Because the other thing that Daryl did while he was in prison was he recorded books on tape so that blind prisoners could listen to them.
Quite noble of him.
They get out of prison, and they have no interest in revenge or suing anybody for anything, and they just say, look, we just want to start our lives again. We're going to move to San Francisco. We're out of here. And I don't know how they were able to be so forgiving emotionally. I mean, I would have been a tower of rage in their position, not the least of which because, and this is very sad, while Daryl and Lola Bross were in prison, their daughter Virginia, who had been 3 months old when the crime was committed, died of a skeletal muscular congenital disease. So their infant daughter died while they were in prison, and they had previously, some years before, had a child who died of the same condition. So that's just awful. I can't imagine being sent to prison for something that I certainly felt that I didn't deserve to be in prison for, not able to care for my child. And even if I deserved to be in prison, I had been mightily provoked. And then you find out that not only did the guy die because of the doctor and not because of you, but you were railroaded during the trial, so much so that your conviction gets vacated, but by the time you're out, your child is already gone.
It's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
It is. It really is. Well, all right, everybody. Have I brought you way down?
I'm down.
There.
I am way down in the dumps now.
So you now get the enviable task, Stuart, of taking an audience who's probably feeling really sad and wants to turn this show off, and you know, being utterly compelling and engaging, as by the way you are. Everybody, if you didn't notice at the top, and I'm sure you did, Mr. Stuart Blues is the host of a wonderful podcast called British Murders, stories about British murderers only, and he does a phenomenal job telling these stories. I mean, I found his show by chance and fell in love with it because we're both historical murder, I hate to say fans, that sounds like the wrong word, right, Stuart? But yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit in your own words about your show, and then I was hoping that from there maybe you would have a Kinda Murdery story from your own life you might be willing to share with us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you first of all for the kind praise. I appreciate that. And so my show, as you've sort of alluded to, it's exclusively British. The reason for that is I live here. I am British. And I felt that a lot of the podcasts I listen to, true crime, mainly focused on North American killers, but also ones that are more notorious. So people like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Green River Killer, people that I've heard a lot about, and I wasn't hearing much variety. So I wanted to combine the British side of it with also, apart from my first season, because that was kind of a trial where I did more notorious people. But from season 2...
What season are you on now?
I'm on season 5 at the moment, so I've done...
Wow.
I do my seasons in episodes, 10 episodes, and I've done 5 so far. And then what I've kind of done as the show's expanded and grown is I start having guests on. I have a lot of author interviews coming up who have upcoming true crime books, and I'll have the random odd movie review for horror movies and stuff, just to... It prevents my boredom as well, because if I'm just doing case after case after case, personally, it gets a little bit tedious. So I like to mix it up a little bit.
I feel you.
I made a show that I would enjoy listening to myself. So I've made...
I know you. I feel you.
You've got to... Because my theory is, if you don't enjoy your own content, what is the point? Like, there's just no point whatsoever. That's why it's the length it is, because that's my attention span with things, 15 to 30 minutes. That's why I just do British things. And basically, you get negative...
You only care about British people? You're like, fuck the rest of the world? That's...
Basically.
I'm just teasing.
It's funny you say that, because one of my friends, Bobby from Killer Stories podcast, that we sort of do a lot of collaborations back and forth. And every time she comes on, we have the sort of banter like you and I are having, and it'll turn into an England versus America kind of face-off. So she'll say something that I find bizarre, and I will call her out on it. When this one reviewer took exception to that, it was clearly an American guy. I feel he was probably like the guy you were talking about, maybe a southern gentleman with a big beard.
Where he felt like you were bullying a lady, I suppose.
He just thought I was so pro-England and anti-America, and he thought...
Oh, yes.
He wasn't happy. He even went on her show and left her a bad review because I was on one episode, which was quite petty, I thought.
Go find the British Murders podcast on your favorite podcasting platform and leave Stuart lots and lots of just nasty reviews.
Please do.
Hey,
I'll eventually get through them when I get through the ones I've already got.
And remember, 5 stars is... The stars indicate how angry you are. So if you're really mad... at this jumped up Brit here, you go leave a lot of 5-star reviews with nasty things to say.
I don't want 5 stars, so don't. Maybe reverse psychology works on your audience. Don't leave 5 stars.
Now we want to hear a little bit about Stuart Blues, not just the podcaster, but the man. You got a Kinda Murdery story for us?
I've got a Kinda Murdery story. Now this actually involves my father.
Awesome.
But obviously because he is my father, it relates to me, and at the end of the story you will see why things could have been a lot different for British Murders and the podcast. So my dad, born in 1962, better get that right, and his father, my granddad, was in the army. Now, my dad is the youngest of 4 children, and they used to travel a lot around Europe, spent a lot of time in Germany, so this is the sort of 60s. It's after, obviously, the Second World War. It's going into the Cold War, I guess, is around that time, I think. Now, probably in 1964, when my dad was just a couple of years old, he was based in he basically said like the Middle East. So wherever the UAE is now, United Arab Emirates, I don't think it was called that back then. Again, my history of geography isn't great, but I don't think it was called that back then. He lived there as my granddad was in the army. He would go to, or his older siblings would go to military school.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Essentially, your father grew up as what we would call over here anyway, an army brat. Do you say army brat in England, or do you have another term for it? Somebody who travels because of the military when they're children?
We don't have the term army brat, but I think it fits the bill. Next time I see him, I will call him an army brat and
see how that goes
and see what happens. So because he was only 2, he wasn't in school, whereas his older siblings were in the army schools, basically. So one day, he is with his mum, my grandma, and they're just getting a taxi to drive somewhere from one place to the other. And he's whinging, as toddlers do at that age. I want an ice cream, I want an ice cream, I want an ice cream.
And for those who don't speak British, whinging means whining?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, continue.
Whinging means
I thought it was lest they think it's a noise that a rusty gate makes or something. Yes, okay, continue.
He was whining that he wanted, complaining, let's say that he wanted an ice cream. And he He went on and on and on and pestered his mum that much that she said, right, can you just pull the taxi over, Mr. Driver? We're going to go to this shop, get an ice cream, and come back out. So they stopped the taxi. Now, at the time, there was a lot of car bombs going off and a lot of explosions. Now, true story, as my dad is in the ice cream shop that he's pestered his mum to take him in, the taxi they got there in, within that sort of 1 or 2 minute window, the taxi they got there in blew up.
Holy hell.
How crazy is that?
Oh, my God.
So if he hadn't whinged or they hadn't pulled over, he would have died, my grandma would have died, I wouldn't have been born. No British murders, that's the real tragedy.
Well, I like to think that he had some deep-seated instinct that there was something deeply wrong and that ice cream would get him out of that car.
It just shows that if your kid ever wants ice cream, give it to them.
Yes.
That's
damn
the
well.
message I'd like you to take away from this.
Yes. So did your grandmother, never get angry at him for whinging ever again? It's like, Mr. Blues, I don't know what your father's first name is. What's your father's first name?
Jim.
Jim's whining again. Everybody evacuate the house. Oh, boy.
I just picture him saying, Mum, can I have an ice cream? No, you can't. You remember what happened last time? Okay. We'll give him one. Get one for him.
I've never heard of someone sweet tooth saving their mothers and their own life. That's quite a takeaway. What a tremendous story, Stuart. Thank you so much.
It's okay.
Well, this has been an absolute blast. Everybody, please, if you've enjoyed listening to Stuart today, or heck, even if you've hated it, nonetheless, go out, find British Murders, exclusively about British murders, subscribe, leave reviews, leave mean reviews, vent your feelings about Great Britain, whatever you want, but engage. It's a great show. I promise you that. You will love it. So go find British Murders, available everywhere. Follow him on Twitter, follow him on Instagram, stalk him on Facebook, whatever you got to do. It's your life. Live it. But make sure you check out British Murders with Stuart Blues. And for Stuart Blues, I'm Zevon Odelberg. And this has been Kinda Murdery.
Kinda Murdery, The Emerald Triangle, is created, researched, edited, produced, and hosted by Zevon Odelberg, with opening theme by Niall Madden and art by the Gin of Lang. Available now on all podcasting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe, review, and tell your friends. You can find us on social media at Kinda Murdery or email at kindamurdery@gmail.com.